Welcome everyone. It's really great to see so many people join to hear Joss talking about midwifery. First of all, I would like to start with acknowledging, recognising and acknowledging. Sorry, my computer's playing up. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the lands on which we undertake our work to promote and defend the interests and values of members. We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians who've cared for this country for thousands of years. And I'd like to pay my respects and welcome to any First Nations people here tonight. Something that we've started doing at the QNMU is starting with a commitment around our values and principles in meetings. So I'm just going to read this to you. The QNMU is committed to ensuring all its gatherings, including meetings, functions and events, are free from all forms of harassment, discrimination and racism. Attendees have the right to be safe and respected, and ask that all attendees act in accordance with these values. If you have any concerns, please raise them with me at any point. So on that note, I will now introduce Dr. Jocelyn Toohill, who many people may know as the Director of Midwifery in the Office of the Chief Nursing and Midwifery Officer. Joss is an expert midwife and health practitioner with 30 years of experience, including the last 6 in leading policy, strategy of maternity services, midwifery workforce, redesign of maternity care at the state level, and influencing policy and decision-making at national and international levels. Jocelyn has mentored students and early career midwives as a clinician, manager and educator over her career, with many of these midwives having gone into leadership positions in the public and private sector, private midwifery practice, and completing higher education degrees. Dr. Toohill established the Gold Coast Hospital Birth Centre in 2006, which provided an opportunity to advocate in EB6 for midwives in contributive models to have annualised salaries for the first time in Queensland. This model has flourished across the state, and there's quite a number of them now. As Director of Midwifery in the Office of the Chief Nursing and Midwifery Office, Jocelyn has a unique role to ensure midwives are recognised for their expertise through policy, education and practice, and to support midwives to work to their full scope of practice. Jocelyn recently developed the now published document, Queensland Normal Birth Strategy, which focuses on the best use of skilled midwifery workforce to deliver high quality maternity care. She has also showcased the work of midwives across the state and provided opportunity for statewide learning and networking through forums such as the Normal Birth Symposium and the Midwives Hub. So I'd like to welcome Jocelyn, and I'll stop chatting now and I'll let Jocelyn speak about all things midwifery. Thank you, Joss.
Thanks, Belinda, and I almost feel like I don't need to say anymore. I think everything's been covered off, but I'll share my screen and we'll go from there. But I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of which we meet tonight as well, and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and particularly pay respect to any Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islanders in our group today. I'd like to thank Belinda and Colleen and the QNMU for the very kind invitation for us to catch up this evening. I've been asked to talk about my career, share my personal leadership philosophy, and perhaps provide some advice for aspiring midwifery leaders. My journey to midwifery has been quite a convoluted one, so I'm happy to tell you my story. I've just picked out some sort of highlights, I suppose, that I feel are worth sharing. But we all have a story, and I think it's through our stories that makes for a rich tapestry of all of our experiences. So I'll start by putting up roles, if you like, that I've held as a midwife, which in and of itself is pretty boring, pretty bland. But I place student in the centre because I have, as you are, a lifelong learner. And with this also comes being a lifelong teacher, a lifelong leader to nurture and pass on your wisdom. When we think of the amazing amount of knowledge and skills that we have in midwifery to when we first started, we have so much to give and to be able to support others. But I have worked as, obviously, a student at different times, not just only at the beginning, but at different phases and stages of my career. also a clinician, also a unit manager. I managed in clinical risk. I also was involved in as a clinician in research. I was also a clinical educator. I went into academia, was a tertiary educator, a researcher, an academic writer, university lecturer, policy, and I guess now bureaucrat, policy or bureaucrat. I don't know how you want to look at it. But because the work environment is changing so much and we have many careers across our lifetime, I just wanted to point out that our skills are transferable. This looks like on the screen 9 different careers. So you can see our skills as midwife are valuable and they are transportable. So we don't have to move out of midwifery if we feel that we need a change, I guess is the message that I want to make. We need midwives at the coalface, as well as in education, in technology and in policy. But when I thought about those roles or titles of what I have done, it brought me to consider that while there is so much to being a midwife, I felt it boiled down to primarily these 3 things. I'm a collaborator with women and families, with colleagues, medical staff and others. I'm an innovator, changing practice, changing systems, and I'm an influencer through policy, research, education, but also through being a collaborator, an innovator. You are, an influencer. This has been since day one. You are all collaborators, innovators, and influencers.
Jocelyn,
Whether this,
sorry to interrupt. It's Colleen here. We're just not seeing your slides click through. I just don't know.
Yeah, I'm still on that slide. Are you?
Oh, okay. You're still on the first slide, just the cover slide.
Oh, okay. So it hasn't gone on. Okay, it's up on mine. So I'm on slide 3.
Oh, okay. No, it's still on the same one for us. Maybe what I'll do is I'll share my screen. So if you want to stop sharing,
yep,
and, I will. Sorry, everyone. Just give us 2 seconds.
Thanks for noticing.
Oops. Bear with me. Oops. I'm just going to.
No, it was interesting, and I thought I could see that you had a next slide with what you were talking about, the 9 different careers, and it was interesting, Joss, because I feel very similar, like all the different sort of midwifery careers I've had. So
yeah. So what
there we go.
The slide you were up to? Did it get to anywhere up past here?
No.
Okay. Well, let's
just the introduction.
If you wouldn't mind, Colleen, just slip to the next one so everyone can see what I had up there. And we'll just slip over to the next one then, if you don't mind. That's perfect. Okay. So really, I was just trying to draw out there, I see, as leading our role as midwives, we are collaborators, we are innovators, we are influencing all the time. And that does lead itself to leadership. And as I was saying, this for me has been since day one. And I really believe that would be the same for each of you. You're all collaborators, you're all innovators, you're all influencers, whether this be in your communication with others to place the woman at the centre of her care or using the evidence to change local practice. It takes leadership in these roles, and leadership is not just about a role or title. It is bringing to life a lived philosophy that others are inspired by or drawn to. So next slide, thanks, Colleen. So the basis for any midwifery role must be true to the profession. As a midwife, we are with women, regardless of role title. We cannot lead midwives if our heart is not with women and not supporting midwives to be with women. And if our dialogue is not about changing culture and systems for midwives to be professionally supported in their roles to be with the woman, what is it? One of my bugbears, I just really, really had to bring it out. One of my big bugbears is when I see women-centred rather than woman-centred care. We don't say people-centred care when we mean person-centred care. The context and the meaning of supporting the individual needs of the woman is blurred and lost when we have an emphasis on the masses. So a part of midwifery leadership is speaking our truth and using woman-centred language, being an ambassador for our profession, knowledgeable in our scope and the evidence that supports our profession, and presenting ourselves professionally in what we say, how we say it, and presenting professionally in any way, any opportunity that we can. And I also include this, I really do think that common courtesies and appearance contribute to this, such as our dress attire, our timeliness, our reliability, our trustworthiness, and our application of ethics and standards of practice. So next slide, thanks, Colleen. Given this was meant to really be about my journey, I'll really now lean into that. And so I'll go back to my journey towards a midwifery career before I considered that I was actually a collaborator, an innovator, and an influencer. I actually decided I wanted to be a midwife when I was in high school. The circumstances surrounding the birth of one of my younger siblings caused me to think about childbirth, my mother's experience, other women, hospital systems, and I guess I wanted to know why women's birth experiences could vary significantly from one woman to another. During the birth of my younger brother, my mother experienced a significant adverse event, not a natural event, not some fluke, but a clinical error that impacted her significantly, both physically and emotionally. And in turn, this had an enormous effect on our family, both physically and emotionally. I'm told that until that time, my mum had been a happy, energetic woman. And I wondered why it seemed so natural for my aunts, who seemed to travel through pregnancy and birth without event, were happy and confident mothers, breastfeeding effortlessly and surrounded by their sisters and my grandmother, shared their stories of becoming and of being a mother, and importantly, seemed well supported through learning from one another. Having positive social support, I came to understand, is a major determinant of health. This wasn't the case for my mother, who lacked energy, was withdrawn and isolated, with no one understanding her situation of having endured a significant and traumatic birth event. I wanted to understand these differences, and hence my pull towards midwifery. As I said, my thoughts about becoming a midwife commenced in high school, and therefore I commenced as a cadet nurse at the age of 16. You can see a picture of me with my youngest brother. To become a midwife in the 70s, you needed to be a nurse first, and you couldn't begin nursing until you were 17. So this really was the commencement of a long and very convoluted path for me to becoming a midwife, as there was no direct pathway into midwifery at that time. As it happened, I didn't actually finish my nurse training at that time, but left nursing at the age of 19 in my second year of a hospital-based general nursing course. And upon leaving, I was awarded an enrolled nurse certificate commensurate with the study and clinical practicum undertaken. Subsequently, I married and I had a baby. And by the way, at that time, you couldn't stay in nursing if you were married. That was not actually why I left nursing, and that's another story. But after working in a family business with my husband, I also worked with Telstra for a bit, and working as a maternity nurse at the Royal Brisbane Women's Hospital, I still had in my heart to be a midwife. By the late 80s, a nursing qualification could only be achieved within a tertiary education sector, and so I completed my 3-year nursing degree, and then finally I was able to undertake a postgraduate diploma in midwifery. In all, before becoming a midwife, I had worked for about 11 years as either a student nurse, an enrolled nurse, or maternity nurse. Therefore, the hospital environment and the medical maternity model was familiar to me. In undertaking the Graduate Diploma of Midwifery program, in addition to clinical blocks of practicum and university lectures, we also partnered with 5 women for follow-throughs, and this was before it became part of the curriculum. It was during follow-throughs that I learned more about the role of a midwife than at any other time in my program. So I feel confident that within the students' program of today, of being required to complete a minimum of at least 10 follow-throughs, that their experience would be more superior and even more rewarding than what I had experienced. I have to say I'm extremely grateful to have experienced those follow-throughs. As a student, I walked the path with those women and families to see their experience from their side, how they enter, navigate, and how they exited the maternity system. The next slide, thanks, Colleen. So in my graduate midwifery year during employment at the Mater Mothers Hospital, I commenced a Master of Midwifery program by continuing to follow one of the families from my undergraduate program. My research was an ethnographic account of a 17-month journey with a couple who had an intellectual disability. I followed this couple across pregnancy, labour and birth to their child's first birthday. It was probably during my time with this couple with a learning disability that I feel I really stepped up as an advocate and was challenged to think and rethink the stance I took, the ethics and the role of the midwife in being woman-centred and supporting families. It meant with this family, I had to be brave in this relatively uncharted territory of parents with a learning difficulty seeking to maintain the care of their own child, but also because I had the opportunity to provide continuity and get to know the extended family and understood their social situation, not just their clinical history. I was able to have insight without the fear that I could see in the overcautious actions of other carers. Despite other health workers being well-meaning, very well-meaning people, the couple were absolutely unfairly judged and they were cruelly treated. The couple were restricted from spending time with their baby because without knowing them, the other health professionals thought they might be a danger and harm their baby. The general consensus was that the baby should be removed to be kind to all, but none of these decision makers knew the family. Kathy, the mother with the intellectual disability, was not brought her baby at night to breastfeed, despite enrolling in private breastfeeding classes during her pregnancy, but was told instead it would be better for the baby if she rested, and therefore she was effectively denied her explicit desire to breastfeed. She was also not included in mother crafting sessions with the other mothers on the ward because staff felt she might drop or drown the baby, despite never observing her with her baby. There were recurrent decisions made about care without input, but plans made for their child's care without consultation of the couple or their extended family. It were hospital and later child health staff's assumptions based on a label of having a disability and this family's outward appearance that guided health professionals' clinical decision-making, not the circumstances of the family, their abilities, or support systems. Despite these challenges, and might I say because of my intimate knowledge through providing continuity of care, I could advocate or influence for this couple, and along with their extended family support, the couple not only kept their baby, have raised a confident, now 29-year-old son. David, their son, graduated from the University of Queensland with a Master's in Psychology and is now a practicing psychologist. So do I dare to think what would have happened to this couple and their son had I and their family not been able to play a part in their care? Would I have been similarly judgmental had I not had the opportunity to provide continuity, to see my role as collaborator, innovator, and influencer? Mine, and likely similar to yours, our professional learning comes from some of the most unlikely places. For this reason, I try not to ever miss an opportunity to reflect and learn from each interaction I have. I learned through reflective practice, and it is this couple with a learning disability who were amongst my best teachers. They taught me more about compassion and tolerance of others and resilience in the face of adversity than any other. They taught me there was more at risk for this family if I did not challenge the status quo, regardless of being surrounded by clinicians who had far greater experience than myself. This couple taught me it was okay to ask why and to keep asking why until the reason was understood, to keep asking why and not tolerate when depersonalised care was being received. Why else am I telling you this? Well, because we're midwives, and because midwives can and do make all the difference to lifelong outcomes for families when they are brave to challenge, when they can work to their full scope across the woman's continuum and provide relationship-based care. Good care cannot occur without kindness, and kindness cannot occur without connection. We are with women and their families at a time that is foundational to their and their children's futures, and it is a privilege and a responsibility that we ethically and morally cannot squander. Is this not leading for better care, for better health and social outcome? Across my midwifery career, I have worked across rural, regional areas and predominantly in tertiary maternity settings as a clinician, educator, and manager of services. In 2004, the Labor government invested in expansion of maternity services, promising if re-elected, a birth centre would be funded at the Gold Coast Hospital. I was encouraged by a colleague to respond to the advertised position that was closing that very day for a midwife at the Gold Coast, to manage ambulatory and birthing services that would be to establish the Gold Coast Birth Centre. Despite not feeling I was good enough or likely would I get an interview, I asked if a late application would be accepted, and I applied. Next slide, thanks, Colleen. Managing and planning establishing a birth centre 20 years ago, most particularly in an environment where it wasn't really wanted by the establishment but was thrust upon them, made for some very hard yards. But there were motivated midwives who had been waiting for this opportunity. There were consumers who were active in the community, and a great opportunity to work with what was gifted, even though it felt like a poison chalice navigating the many roadblocks that I encountered. Through establishing governance processes, including committees with consumers as members alongside hospital management and decision makers, the QNMU, and all having equal voices at the decision-making table, and working with them to build relationships of trust, including with the obstetricians, enabled the birth centre to come to fruition. Similar to when we work with women and we have a relationship of trust, it is important to have this with all other levels of staff, most particularly the obstetricians, so we learn together, communicate together, and influence the importance of woman-centred care. If we leave anyone behind on our journey, it is likely to stall our progress. So inclusiveness and relationship building was key, along with taking some risks. To open the birth centre, we had determined to enable the midwives to have the flexibility required. Industrial provisions for caseload was imperative, and through the enterprise bargaining process with Queensland Health and the QNMU, we introduced to our Nursing and Midwifery Award for the first time annualised salaries and local agreements to support and protect midwives to work with women according to their needs and provide the flexibility for midwives to be autonomous in their care. I actually felt terrified presenting to the nursing leadership the need for change to our award, but it was voted on and it was granted. After establishing the birth centre and maintaining an inclusive governance structure, I was seconded in around 2008 to work in the Department of Health to develop the maternity and later also work on the neonatal clinical services capability framework. This broadened my reach nationally as other jurisdictions were interested in what Queensland was doing. And while initially I didn't think I would be much good at working in the department, it gave me a unique opportunity to influence and install midwifery and woman-centred language to a very influential document that all HHSs were obliged to comply with through their service line agreements. This was my first taste of policy work at a statewide level. I was then approached by Griffith University to assist write their Bachelor Midwifery program and became the inaugural Bachelor Midwifery Director. However, I had been away from the Gold Coast Hospital and a number of key leadership staff changes at the hospital had occurred when I received a phone call from very distressed midwives advising that the birth centre was under threat of closure. Next slide, thanks. The closure was largely due to a break in relationships, breakdown in the governance processes that relied heavily on openness and transparency and ongoing co-design. The Friends of the Birth Centre midwives, the academics at Griffith, where I was now working, and the QNMU mobilised quickly a public rally. It was through this connect that open discussion with the hospital management and had the birth centre reopened almost as quickly as it had been closed. A good lesson in the power of consumers and the media, but also in having in place succession planning that includes a joint philosophy. As indicated, I was employed at Griffith University to operationalise the Bachelor Midwifery program, and Griffith is where my midwifery career commenced as a student. So now I was employed as an academic. Next slide, thank you. Once in academia, the expectation is that further study will be undertaken. I completed my PhD at Griffith in 2014, and I was fortunate enough to have 3 superior academic leaders and mentors in Professors Jenny Gamble, Jenny Fedrick, and Deborah Creedy. In my PhD research, I investigated the efficacy of midwifery counselling of women with childbirth fear and found that not only are midwives well placed to reduce women's childbirth fears, they assist women to approach their birth more emotionally confident. And I'm probably not telling you anything new. This was a multi-site randomised control trial and was research intensive. While doing my PhD, I managed an NHMRC research grant, giving me consolidated skills in both qualitative and quantitative or mixed research skills, along with report writing and academic writing. which on the back of having worked in policy within the department, enabled me to identify that the required writing skills for these different roles varied significantly, but showed me again how a midwife's skills and knowledge is adaptable in many contexts and can influence change for the better. Like all of us, while juggling the work and PhD life happens with its many curveballs. My husband died of cancer after I had handed my PhD manuscript in, but before he saw me graduate. I must say grief is seriously under-recognised in our society, and I think I can honestly say it has taken me the 8 years since that time to come fully out of the grief fog that enveloped me. 6 years ago, I accepted the position of the Director of Midwifery for Queensland Health in the Office of the Chief Nursing and Midwifery Officer. I entered that role feeling I had gone to a foreign country, I didn't speak the language, and I didn't have a map. But what it offered me was to ensure that midwifery could be represented in government documents, in legislation, in regulation, and in policy, and I did grab it with both hands. When you think about my career, where I started, the roundabout way I took to complete my midwifery education must tell you that any of you can aspire to whatever it is that you want. While there has been a trajectory for me to be in the privileged position I am in today, it did mean pivoting or restarting fresh to learn new things, being open-minded, being willing to partner and listen, learning to understand from others' perspectives, from women and their families, from obstetricians and other health professionals' viewpoints, health management and government, and of course, taking personal risks, even when I doubted my own abilities. Next slide, thanks, Colleen. So I think it's pretty clear, being with women and woman-centeredness is my driver, regardless of the role or title I have held. And my initial inquisitiveness over my mum's experience has never left me. I want to not only understand, but to make a difference for other women. I believe every woman should have the option of a known midwife who she can reach out to when she needs support, and every midwife should be supported in their role, whatever that might be, to be the best that they possibly can be. Thanks, Colleen. Next slide. In this slide, I just wanted to give a plug for our Midwives Hub on iLearn that you can access through the QEPS, where there's a leadership forum in there, which has information and tools developed specifically for midwives. So my advice is, not all leaders come with position or title, and we are all leading in our own way. I think the best leaders are authentic. Be your authentic self. Do lean into your strengths. By demonstrating your belief and strengths, you will likely identify that you are demonstrating leadership, and by being yourself, you can more likely walk your talk, or more likely to be consistent to a set expectation, and more likely to set the cultural standard you are seeking with your peers and colleagues. Yes, next slide. Thanks, Colleen. The second point I would make is to reflect daily on your interactions. Reflect on others. What did you like? What did you admire? What was effective? Reflect on your kindness barometer. How have you been kind to yourself? Protective of your time. You cannot be all things to all people, but also be clear about your boundaries and your availability, because often as a leader, everyone does want a piece of you. But also be prepared to take some risks, as I've said about 3 or 4 times now. Take yourself out of your comfort zone. Challenge what you know isn't right in a respectful and considered way. Apply for roles that play to your strengths, even if you don't feel ready. As a very smart and wonderful midwife leader and colleague once told us, leap and the net will open. It was Kathy Stiles who said that, and she sadly passed away as a young midwife leader in May last year, but her legacy remains. I also suggest to be engaged, be fully engaged with what you do. Listen and observe those you serve. Be consistent and responsive. No special people, no favourites. Listen and observe those you admire as effective leaders. Be professionally engaged so you are around like-minded, progressive and encouraging people. I became involved in the Australian College of Midwives as an early career midwife and remain engaged. This provided and provides me networks and opportunities. If not the right group, find another or start your own leadership group. You don't have to wait for others to lead. As the Africans say, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go together, if you want to go far, go together. So find your tribe. Next slide, please. So why is leadership important? Well, we know all the rhetoric around we eat our own. So we can continue to that and teach them to be unengaged and helpless so that they adopt a see, hear and speak no evil. But this is not safe. Leaders grow vision, encourage listening and for staff to have voice, that whether that be for innovation, redirection or challenging the status quo. Next slide. Thanks, Colleen. So for me, midwifery is a privilege and a responsibility. I believe in social justice and the evidence. I've lived, as many of you have, and experienced the maternity experience as a mother and consumer and as a professional. I know our profession provides the best outcomes. I know, and the evidence supports me and you, that midwifery is good for women, good for babies, and good for society. I believe we as a midwife are socially, ethically, and morally responsible for ensuring women have access to our skills, our knowledge, and our care, so that women have safe and affirming births. So in turn, we build communities, strong communities, through safe, quality healthcare. When I say births, I mean all that leads up to labour and after. I do my role as I believe in the profession of midwifery, of being with women. I do my role because I recognise the enormous privilege I have to inform and educate government of the value of midwives and to give midwives and women a voice in policy, regulation, legislation, education and workforce direction. Each and every one of us, regardless of the midwifery role we take, is privileged and have the opportunity to enhance women's and their families' lives every day, both directly and indirectly, as collaborators, as innovators and influencers. While I am not currently working as a clinician, I am still a midwife, and each of us are and have capacity to lead in our own way in any role. Thank you.
Thanks, Joss. That was really amazing. Can everyone hear me? Yep, good. That was really great, Joss. At the beginning, Joss said to me that she thought it might be dry. That wasn't dry at all. That was fascinating. That was really quite moving. You know, thank you for sharing all that with us. It's a lot of stuff that I had no idea. And I thought I knew you pretty well. So yeah, that's some really interesting things. It's interesting some of the different reasons we take on midwifery, isn't it? It's great. So does anyone have anything that they want to ask? You could just pop something in the chat, or if you put your hand up, we can unmute you. I think I can easily say on behalf of everyone in the chat that are saying great, thank you, all that, is that you are very appreciated midwifery leader, so very valued. So thank you for everything that you've done, Joss. I remember that day. Was I in Optimo? I must have been in Optimo when you know they closed the birth centre, and like within 24 hours they had like 400 angry women on the front door. So it's that was great. That was a great feeling.
It was amazing, and it was
the Joss is frozen, or I've frozen.
I don't know if you can hear me, but it was amazing, Belinda. Just the motivation and having that community connection just made so much of a difference. And when the community contacted the police to have the rally, the police just had no hesitation, because many of them had experiences or experiences of their family through the birth centre. So they absolutely supported the rally as well. So it was fantastic. Yeah, absolutely, Barb. Gay Hawksworth was absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing.
I think Belinda's internet is not working. There's another question in there from Danielle asking what specific leadership training is available for midwives.
Yeah, look, we've sort of Look, I don't know. I think you seek out your own. As far as what specific, I do know that the college, the Australian College of Midwives, does provide some. We've tried to set up that self-directed within the Office of the Chief Nursing and Midwifery Officer, that through the iLearn portal of the Midwives Hub, but it is self-directed. I do know, that some of the other colleges do put on leadership, but I think, I think it's not always can you learn everything in courses. I think a lot is through your peers. For me, I think it's also through self-reflection. I think we know what is good leadership and not so good leadership. But maybe others can put something in the chat as to some leadership programs that they've been involved in.
I think as well that on International Women's Day, one of our speakers was talking about how to really use mentors as a way of, moving into leadership or being inspired or just learning different things. So I think that's a really good point. And she pointed out that there are mentor programs that are official, but there's also a lot of unofficial ways of doing mentorship and just simply reaching out to someone who you consider a leader, a teacher, or a mentor, and asking them, if you could shadow them or if you could have a conversation over a coffee. So there's probably, like you say, many different ways of seeking it out on your own.
Yeah. I did see, I haven't got the chat in open, but I did see a couple of questions come up. I think one was from Michael about what can midwives do who might be burnt out from from COVID. Look, I think there's no doubt many people are really tired, and I think you need to do what, you have to look after yourself, essentially. I think if you need to down your hours, if you need to take a break, I think you absolutely have to do that. I think it is about self-care. I think when we work long hours, sometimes we're so tired, we've got no time left for ourselves, but I think we really have to make time to get out and enjoy our life. I've got to say, last Friday, I was lucky enough to go down to the Gold Coast to the First Nations continuity model that really has expanded and expanded. It's got a massive footprint, but it was welcome to country for the Jarjams. And it was an afternoon away from the computer and away from the desk. And I can't tell you what an amazing difference that made for me, not working longer into the day, but going home feeling uplifted and refreshed and entering the weekend so much more refreshed rather than feeling just worn out and feeling that I was going into the weekend, having to recover. I already felt recovered just from a couple of hours being around amazing people, really amazing people, transforming care, being involved in something that's not usual to me. So I think trying something different. I went through the smoking ceremony. I had the ochre to my face. It was amazing. So I think just trying something different, joining with some people, going out with some friends, it doesn't have to be a big deal, going for a walk, just trying to find a different outlet, something that suits you.
I think
no, you go. I'll leave it over to you.
No, that's all right. I was just going to say, add to that what we've seen some places do. I think Gold Coast is one of them that does it really well. Is like wellness days. Obviously, not everyone can attend them on the same day, but days where can do different things. And up north, we do see some midwives. So the Atherton, Mareeba and Innisfail, and I think, no, not Cairns, but they get together once a month and they'll just do something interesting, like someone's skill around rebozo or crafting or whatever, and they get together and sort of are able to. I think one of the worst things we do when we're burnt out and stressed out is we start being isolated. More and more isolated. Even when we're working with colleagues, we're not spending time with them, so we're not necessarily doing that that level of debriefing that we used to be able to do. I've got a couple more. There's a couple more questions for you, Joss. What kind of projects research are coming up from OCNMO and collaborators, and how does someone get involved in these? I think a lot of skills can be obtained from participating in such activities. That's from Joanne.
Thanks, Jo. I suppose the usual sort of things that we do, we've got, some really exciting work, I guess, that we, and actually, jointly with QNMU and others. So we've got the government election commitments at the moment with midwifery ratios. The University of Queensland have just been successful in the tender to do the research around that, do the evaluation around that. So that's good, but we do have representation from most of the midwifery leaders of each of the HHSs on the sub-working group to inform what that evaluation should look like. We've also had approved through the recent EB, the generic level statements for midwives. So that's really exciting stuff. And Belinda might want to talk more about that, because I tell you what, we've worked really hard on that, haven't we?
Yes.
So if you had the opportunity to read that, it is just such, I think, beautiful language that really plays to what a midwife is and wants to be recognised as. So the next component of that will really be to get the role descriptions to align to that. The other work that we're doing, obviously, with the Growing Deadly Family Strategy, we've got a number of, we're partnering with a number of HHSs that have been funded across the state to bring about continuity of midwifery care, to co-design models with community, for community to have more voice and leadership and governance around the models of maternity care, and to increase First Nations workforce. So that is what that's about. And there's 5 HHSs that have been funded across the state, and I think there's just been 6 or 7 NGOs across the state. And the idea is for that partnership between the NGO and the HHSs for those models to go forward. We have got a showcase around the Growing Deadly Families coming up in June, and those invitations, or anyone that wants to come, that will go out by advertisement. We've got PAP coming up for each of the areas in May to contribute to and showcase any of their work. I'm also looking to hold a very brief session on International Day of the Midwives, just an hour and a half on the morning of the 5th of May, just to celebrate at, I'm hoping to have a international speaker, a national speaker, and some local speakers, but also to showcase the wonderful work that each HHS wants to put up of their highlights of their midwives. So we'll get to share that. I'm just trying to think what else we might be doing. We do often partner with a couple of the universities where they have students who are undertaking a research as a component of their undergraduate programs, and we generally have them come in. Well, they don't always come into the office, but certainly they partner, and there's one a year that sort of has been nominated by the university as a high achiever, and one nurse and one midwife that comes into the office to have that opportunity to work. So I generally have one student a year that I work on a research project with.
Yeah,
I guess the other, sorry, Belinda, I was just going to say the other big thing that Colleen or yourself, Belinda, in the introduction talked about the Queensland birth strategy that we have. That has been a little bit put on, well, just stalled a bit. It hasn't been stopped. Basically, it's come with no funding, and the state of the the situation is we need to find funding within. There's no funding coming. So that's what we're working towards, to get this moving again, and we are getting it moving again. So the first 2 things that we're moving forward on with that strategy is multidisciplinary normal birth education. And we'll do that through the Clinical Skills Development Centre at the Royal Brisbane. To have that, and we do know that it's mandatory in the CSCF for there to be annual multidisciplinary normal birth education, but I don't think that happens. I think we get all emergency education, but we forget about the normal. And I think it's really important for us to have that, so that the medical staff can, if they don't already know or if they've forgotten, that they can realign and understand what is so important about normal physiology, about the birth environment, about how we're caring for women at the moment, and that just walking into a room and do it, let alone the inductions and everything else, it's sometimes the wrong person in the room is a major intervention in itself. So that's one of the things that we'll be kicking off really quickly. The other thing that we'll be doing is developing co-designed consumer decision aids around induction of labour, VBAC, and also epidural, because we really don't have that sort of information. So that's come out of the normal birth strategy as well. And we've got the launch coming up of water immersion, water birth package that has been developed through the Clinical Skills Development Service at the Royal Brisbane as well.
Thanks, Joss. Just note, Colleen has put in here that we're having a on the 8th of May, we're having a burnout for midwives and nurses webinar. So cool. Hopefully there'll be some strategies in that. I find it all, I always find it sad when I see people say they don't think they've ever seen normal birth. If we look at our stats, it's probably less than 20% of women having no intervention at all, like just a normal birth. It's there's a lot that we're working on to change some of that. A good question, because it is coming, and I know that there was a spiel again in today's news. Lots of negative press on rural and remote maternity services. Do you know what's being done higher up to help promote continuity of care models and birthing closer to home?
Yeah. So I think, I guess one of the messages that we're really trying to get through is, pivoting, not closing, but pivoting from a level 3 to a level 2, not closing. And I think, a component of the Queensland birth strategy is publicly funded home birth. So that will be progressing as well. We've just got to go through the governance processes and the usual layers of government. So I really feel that, with the right, and I feel really encouraged because we've got great support from our Deputy Director General in CEQ, Dr. Helen Brown, and certainly Shelley as the Chief Nurse and Midwife. She is absolutely championing this as well. So I know we don't have everyone over the line supporting that, but I do feel more confident than I've ever felt in my entire 30 years that we will have it, who knows when, I can't say, but because I don't know, but certainly I think we're heading in the right direction for a very positive outcome.
Yep, I think that's kind of answered Ashley's question. Publicly funded home births coming. I think it will have to. I agree with Joss. I feel like it'll get there eventually. Does anyone else have any more questions? There was a question around Kate the babies that I did answer in the chat, because we are doing we're going to do a second audit just so we get more information again on the 5th of May, on International Day of the Midwife. But there'll be a lot coming out on the week of the 27th. We're doing 3 different webinars at different times to sort of explain everything that we're doing in that space.
Yeah.
Well, I think if there's no more questions, I'd really like to thank you for your time. That was really interesting, Joss. It was really good to hear. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And yeah, we'll just the supporting and growing of midwifery leadership. I know Joss and I always on the same page with that. Whatever we're working on, it's around midwives need to be led by midwives. We need good, strong midwifery leadership, and unfortunately, often some of our problems don't necessarily come from the medical side of birthing. It can be our own leadership for our own colleagues. So growing that sense of purpose to be the midwives that we started off wanting to be, I think is really, really important, and working in that space so that we have more and more midwives, contemporary midwifery leadership as well, not just, so I think that's something we'll continue to work on.
Yeah, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it.